Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my labor and delivery story. We'll go way back. Okay, so I had my baby girl at 37 weeks and 2 days. So going back to 36 weeks, the whole time I was 36 weeks pregnant, I was constantly, I just kept telling my husband, I kept telling everybody like something's off, like something just feels off, like she's coming. Like I just kept saying like she's coming. I had like every single feeling I had, any symptom, any like pain, anything, I was just like, this is it, like this is it. I just kept saying to myself like this is it. And I kind of like, I just felt like something, like she was coming soon. So yeah, if you would have looked at my Google history, 36 weeks, like it was, okay, headache at 36 weeks, sign of labor, cramping at 36 weeks, sign of labor, mood swings, like just everything. I was, if you would have looked at my Google history, you would have thought I was like a hypochondriac or something. Like, so yeah, so then going into 37 weeks, I had one of my prenatal visits at 37 weeks and 1 day. Like I was 37 weeks and 1 day. And I kept telling my doctor, like I told my doctor, I was like, okay, I've been having all I said, like 30, the whole time, 36 weeks, I was nauseous. Like I felt like I was having my first trimester symptoms all over again. Like I was extremely tired, I was extremely nauseous, I was in a lot of pain. Like I was getting a lot of like lower cramps, like where you would get period cramps, and in my lower back, like I just was cramping a lot. And I was like, this was not like this before. I did not have like any of the pains before. Like something's really off. Like I just, and I just felt this need to, like, I was like, everything needs to be perfect. Like I just started, which is like also a form of nesting, but I was just like, we don't have this done, we don't have this done. Like I just started freaking out about everything, which before I was kind of just not really worried about it. I was like, it will all get done in time. And then I just started like, we need everything done now. And I was like, yeah, I'm having a lot of cramping, like, and I really wanted to know if I was dilated. So I had my doctor check my cervix to see if I was dilated, which was painful, by the way, but they have to do what they have to do. And she was like, you're actually not dilated. She's like, but the first thing she did when like she put her hand in, she was like, she's like, wow, that baby's head is really low. And I was like, okay, yes, like labor started, like I'm dilated. And I was like, so how far dilated am I? And she was like, you're actually not dilated. She was like, you're 75% effaced though. And I was like, okay, so how am I not dilated but her head is low? And it just has to kind of like thin out in order for the baby to come out. And then dilating is it like opening, so it was like really thinned out. And I was 75% effaced, meaning like once you're at 100% effaced, like your cervix is like, it's not just dilation that matters. I thought that dilation was the only thing that mattered about like labor, but it's dilation and effacement. I did not know that. And she was like, no, like your body, the baby will come when the baby's ready to come. She's like, she could come today, she could come tomorrow, next week, in 3 weeks. She was like, you just, is she waking up? Yeah. She was like, whenever, she'll come whenever she's ready. And I was like, okay. She's like, but you're doing, oh, she was like, you're doing great. Just keep doing whatever you're doing. And that day, like I went home, like I walked, and okay, that same day, like I'm just, okay, still cramping, still, and I felt like really discouraged at the appointment. And I just felt like she was wrong. I know like obviously the check was correct, but I was like, I'm going into labor soon, like I just feel it. And so then I'm just, carrying on about my day. Comes around the next day, it was like 3:30 in the morning, I started having like again cramps and stuff. And then at 4:30, like I was having a really hard time sleeping. Like I could not sleep that night. I don't know why. Well, now I know why, but I couldn't sleep. I could not fall asleep. I just felt so anxious for some reason. So I could not sleep. And then when I finally decided, like, okay, I'm gonna just, like, I started to finally doze off. It was around like 3:30. Like, okay, then I'm still tossing and turning, and here it is 4:30 now in the morning. No, like 4 in the morning. I make one like move, like I just move to my side, and I just feel this like liquid coming out. And I was like, okay, like, towards the end of your pregnancy, you can, like your bladder is not the strongest. Sometimes you can like pee on yourself, like have little accidents, or you know, there's a lot of discharge at the end of your pregnancy too. So I was like, okay, it's probably that. Like I went to the bathroom, didn't really think anything of it, because I was just like, okay, it's just like pee or something, or discharge. And then I move again and even more liquid comes out, and I was like, okay, this doesn't feel like pee. Like it doesn't feel like I'm peeing myself, like this just feels weird. And I started getting even more nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, of course I'm like, is my water breaking? Like, oh my gosh, like this is it. And then I wake my husband up and I'm like, I think my water's breaking. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I don't know, like this wet stuff just keeps coming out. And I was getting very nervous, and so I just put on a pad, because I saw online that if you put a pad on and like it fills up, like the pad gets like wet but it's like clear, like the liquid is clear, like that's your water breaking. So I put it on and I'm just sitting there and I just keep feeling stuff coming out, and I'm like, okay, like I'm still trying to just be super calm. You know, I was like, I don't want to call my doctor yet, like I don't want to have to go all the way over there if I'm not in labor and have to come all the way back, because I delivered in like a different state. Like all my prenatal visits were in a different state, so I had to take a ferry boat to get there, just because I live in like a smaller town and I just wanted to be like at a better hospital, more diverse, like where I knew I was going to be taken care of, and my daughter and I were going to have like a safe and healthy delivery. Stand up from my bed, and my husband's up at this point, and he's like, yeah, your water's breaking, like I see it coming out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like, I'm wearing, you know, like my pajama pants, and like you can just see it like coming down my leg, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is it. And so I call my doctor and I tell her, and she's like, yeah, you know, that sounds pretty convincing. She's like, I want you to just come into labor and delivery. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm so nervous. So we're getting in the car, we're packing everything up. Then, you know, it was perfect timing because we got there and the ferry was already there. Like I didn't have to wait or anything for the ferry to. The sun was like rising and it was really pretty and the water was really calm, and I was like, this is so soothing. Like I need this right now because I am extremely like panicky and anxious, but I was like keeping it together. I was doing a really good job of just like keeping it together. Like, and then we finally got to the hospital. It was like now like 5:30 in the morning, I'd say. And we go in, and the nurse is like, oh, we've been waiting for you, you know, like, because I'm coming all the way from, you know, people do it, like, it's not an uncommon thing, but I guess it's also not, like, an everyday thing. So, then they're like, the nurse is like, okay, like, where do you want, like, to put her? Like, what room do you want to put her in? And then the nurse is like, 6. And in my head, I'm instantly like, oh my gosh, 6 is a horrible number. This is just going to be great. Like, I don't know. I was just being superstitious. And when we get there, and it's like this gorgeous room, have like the views of the lake and like the city, and it's just so pretty. And they're like, well, we decided to give you the nicest room with like a view of like your hometown because you came across the lake. And I was like, that is so nice. Like, that's so thoughtful. I just thought it was really sweet of them because, you know, obviously being in labor, riding a ferry and stuff, like anything could go wrong. The ferry could stop, you could deliver the baby on the ferry, like just a lot of bad things could happen. So it was very thoughtful of them. And then, so I get there, they confirmed that it was, I had a hard time with them because they do a test to see if your amniotic fluid has broken. And it's like a speculum, and they like swab like in there and stuff, and I was just very squeamish and squirmy, and it was not working out. Like, it just wasn't working out. Like, I just was in a lot of pain when they were doing it. I was like, just no, like, this isn't working out. And the doctors were all very nice, and they're like, you know, we don't want to hurt you or anything, so, you know, we'll just leave it, and we'll just try and find another way to test the amniotic fluid. And so basically my nurse, I loved her. Like, she was just like, I kind of want to just tell them, like, well, obviously look at her clothes, because the clothes I came in with, I had to put a hospital gown on, and my underwear and pants were like soaked in fluid. Like, you could clearly tell, like, okay, this wasn't like I peed myself, like, this is my water. She was like, I kind of just want to hand it to them and be like, yeah, like, her water's broke. So, or sorry, membranes ruptured is the medical term. And she was like, so then they gave it a few more hours, and then the doctor finally was like, I'm gonna see if I can swab like on the bed sheet. She's like, because it, you know, it is still coming out, and like I'm gonna see if I can just pick up like a specimen of it from the bed sheet. And I was like, okay. And so she did that. She comes back and she's like, oh yes, you know, apparently it turns blue when your water, like it is amniotic fluid. She's like, yeah, so, you know, it is your water that's broken. So, you know, we're going to keep you here because once your water breaks, you have 24 hours to deliver the baby. They gave me the option. They were like, we're not going to check your cervix because, you know, you're super squeamish and we don't want to hurt you, like with the whole speculum exam. And I was like, okay. So like, we're going to let you, either you can get on Pitocin now, and Pitocin is like an induction, like an induced labor, and I really did not want to have an induced labor. That was like my biggest fear, because like obviously progressing labor on your own is painful, but like medicine induced labor is obviously more painful because they're controlling like how much is going in you, how much you're gonna basically like they're controlling your labor. That's how I saw it. And I was just like, so they gave me the option, like, we can put you on Pitocin now. Like, it depends, like, do you want this just over with, or do you want to give your body the chance to progress naturally? And I was like, I want to progress naturally. Like, I do not want to be like on Pitocin right away, like, because you never know, like I could dilate to 10 centimeters on my own right away, and or within a few hours or whatever. And so then they're like, okay, we'll give you 4 hours. In 4 hours, if you haven't progressed, then we're gonna put you on Pitocin. And I was like, okay. The 4 hours passed, and I was getting like a little crampy, you know, wasn't like too bad. It just felt a lot like period pain, like period cramps, like just very light. I did not feel at all like extreme pain or anything. And I was like, okay. So then 4 hours passed, and I'm like, okay, like they could tell by my contraction like machine, there's a machine that monitors your contractions and the baby's heart rate, and they were like, okay, like, yeah, your contractions are progressing, like, you know, you are progressing naturally. And I was like, okay, great. But then they still put me on Pitocin, which, you know, I guess I don't know why, they just put me on Pitocin. And so after the 4 hours, they put me on Pitocin, and I'm not even joking, as soon as she put the IV in and like pressed the button to like have it start, it was like instant, just like extreme cramps. Like I literally was like, ow. Like I was not saying ow or anything before, and as soon as she did it, and obviously started at the like lightest, smallest dosage, and I was just like, okay, this is painful. This is why I didn't want an induced labor, because they're like basically controlling your contractions and like the pain you're in, and they up it like every 2 hours. So here I am. I think I went like, yeah, like, so it was on the smallest setting, and at this point I am like in a lot of pain. I'm pretty quiet. I didn't scream or anything like throughout my whole labor. I was in a lot of pain though. And so I'm just like taking the Pitocin, and then after an hour of being on Pitocin, they came in and checked my cervix, and I was at 3 centimeters dilated, and they didn't even think I was going to be at 3 either, because they had said like, oh, well, if your doctor yesterday said you weren't dilated, like you probably are at like half a centimeter, like you probably haven't dilated that much in like a day. And they were wrong, because as soon as they checked me, they're like, oh, you're at 3 centimeters, and I'm like, okay, like 7 more to go, like we got this. And she was like, and you're like 95% effaced, and I was like, okay, let's get this going. So then after that, yeah, they had me on Pitocin for an hour, and then after they checked my cervix, the nurse came back in to up my dosage, and I started becoming in a lot more pain. And I was doing what I could. I was walking around the room trying to just, you know, because like sitting in bed made the contractions worse, instead of like getting up and moving around, like made me feel a lot better. And then she got me like a labor ball, and I was just like sitting on it and like rolling on it and like trying to like ease like the pain as naturally as I could, because I didn't want to get the epidural at 3 centimeters when I'm in that much pain at 3. Like 10 is when I'm gonna need the epidural. So my original plan was like 5 centimeters I wanted to wait to get the epidural, but you know, birth plans aren't really, nothing ever really goes as planned. So then at this point, she had given me a hot pack. I've been walking around the room. Like, I have done everything to just naturally try to ease the contraction pain. And what makes it like so funny is like, even though I was in so much pain, they like the nurse that kept coming in, she's like, you are just so nice for somebody who's in labor. Like, you're so polite, you know, you're being so nice for somebody who's like literally in labor. And like the people in the postpartum room told me that too, like for someone who's just given birth, like you're super polite, super nice, like, which I honestly take pride in, because like these people are here to do their job. Like, you know, there's no need to be rude to them. And like I said, like I wasn't screaming, or I was really surprised by that, because I thought that like if you watch my what's in my hospital bag video, I said I'm gonna be sweating, crying, screaming. Like, I was very calm, and I'm like super surprised at myself for that, because I did not see that coming. I did not expect that for myself. And so then another hour or two goes by, and I just am at this point like holding on to like the bars of the bed, like just holding on in like silence, like, and breathing so hard. I'm like just in a lot more pain because of the Pitocin. And again, I'm still like super calm, and I'm just like silently taking this pain. And then it got to a point where I literally, the nurse came in, and I was like, I want the epidural. Like, I really want the epidural. Like, can you get the anesthesiologist? Like, can you let him know? Like, I can't take this anymore. I really can't. And she was like, yep, like they know about you. You're on the list to be like next for the anesthesia, but they're like in the middle of like a surgery or something right now. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be awful. Like, I literally, like, some complication happened, and that's why they were taking longer than expected. And I was like, I can't take this anymore. Like, I kept telling her, and she was so sweet. She was just like, I know. She's like, you're doing such a great job, you know, just keep breathing, Jasmine. Like, they were just so sweet. Like, I honestly, I'm so glad I had the labor experience that I did. And because you hear a lot of horror stories. And yeah, so she was just like, just keep breathing, you know. And she really was trying everything to like help me just like, you know, to ease the pain as naturally as I could. So then finally the epidural comes, and I was so happy to see that anesthesiologist. Like, I saw her, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, so I was super excited. She put the epidural in, which did not hurt at all. Like, the only thing that was really bad at that point was that at that point my contractions were every like 30 seconds, like coming together like really, really fast. Like, I barely had any time to breathe or like calm down from them. Like, they were just really close together, and they were really intense. So I had to, like, I was getting the epidural in my back as I was contracting like really bad. And but you know, it wasn't as bad as I thought. Everyone's like, I was so scared for the epidural. I'm like, this giant needle, this, like, it really was not at that point. Like, the contractions are way worse compared to the epidural. So then after she left, I start, you know, feeling the pain going away. And I remember telling her, I was like, thank you so much. And she was like, oh, don't thank me yet. Like, you know, something could go wrong with it. And I was just like, okay, like, but nothing went wrong, thankfully. It was a successful epidural, and I'm so thankful. And then like 20 or 30 minutes after the epidural, like really soon after the epidural, I start kind of feeling some like cramps, like not like super intense or anything, but just like some light cramping. And I'm like, so my nurse comes back in, and I ask her, I'm like, is it normal to feel a little bit of like cramping? And she's like, yeah, you know, sometimes the epidural hasn't like gotten fully to each side yet. It's still working its way through. So, you know, you can like feel some of the pain, I guess. And I was like, okay. She's like, we just give it like 20 more minutes and it should be completely in. And then at this point, I'm like shaking, like involuntarily like shaking, like my body is just like shaking. And my doctor walks in, and she's like, oh, you have the labor shakes. And I was like, the labor shakes, like, what is that? And my nurse is like, oh yeah, like, and I'm like, what is what is the labor shakes? Like, can somebody please fill me in on the labor shakes? And I just, like, my foot was just going like this, my hands were like this, like I was just, and I asked her, like, what is that? And she was like, well, sometimes like the adrenaline in your body is like getting ready for birth and stuff, so you just naturally start like getting jittery. And I was like, okay, but I'm supposed to, like, I'm at this point I'm numb, you know, I'm not feeling my legs like shaking or anything, I'm just seeing them twitch, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, my doctor's like, okay, so let's check you. And she checks me and she goes, okay, so you're at 10, like it's time to start pushing. And I was like, what? Like, I just remember being in so much shock. I was like, I've been on Pitocin for like, I don't know, not that long. Like, I just got the epidural. How is it already time to push? But I knew something was wrong because my contractions were getting so much closer together. Like, when I was getting the epidural, I was like, this is way too close together for me to be like 3 centimeters or something. And my nurse even said, like, at the end when I asked her, it's like, how far dilated was I by the time I got it? And she was like, I'd say around like 7 or 8 centimeters, because right away, like pretty much like 30-40 minutes after the epidural, I was already at a 10. So, and usually the epidural will like slow down your dilation process because your body starts kind of going numb. So I was like, I made it to 7. Like, I was so proud of myself. But so, okay, then it's time to start pushing. She's like, okay, we're gonna do some practice pushes. Practice pushes are not practice pushes, okay? It is actually like, you're actually pushing. Like, I thought we were gonna practice just like the breathing or something. And she had me do 3 practice pushes. And then she goes, okay, I'm gonna go get my stuff on. Like, I'll be back in 20 minutes. So then at this point, it is now 5:30 p.m. And she comes back, and I would just remember, like, she came back, we started pushing. I had my mom on FaceTime on the laptop, and she was watching everything. I was pushing for 2.5 hours, literally 2.5 hours, which was a long time. But, you know, she said it's normal, it's your first baby, like, it takes time. But again, like, the pushing, I was extremely calm. Like, everyone was in shock, including myself, like how well I was handling this, because my epidural had kind of worn off when it was time for me to push, and I didn't know that they wanted you to still kind of feel when you needed to push, because I guess it had been an issue in the past of like women not being able to push because they're so numb. So I had like a button that I could like click for more, and I was clicking for more, but I could still feel like the contractions, and I felt the ring of fire, I felt the head, like it was still painful. But so basically when she, like, it would be time for me to push, and I would just tell her, like, I would tell my doctor, like, normally the doctor's like, okay, push, and I would be like, okay, I'm having a contraction, it's time for me to push. Like, I would tell her, and then I would push 3 times. And you don't really get a break between pushes. Like, you're like inhaling and then pushing again for like 10 seconds, like 3 times, and then you stop, and then you have another contraction. And so between contractions, I was literally just sitting there, and like my eyes were closed, and I was like, and then I'd be like, I'm having a contraction, I need to push. Like, it was so calm. I was not expecting that for myself. I honestly thought I was gonna be screaming. And even my doctor was like, for you being so young and this being your first child, she's like, you really are doing a good job. Like, I was not screaming at her, I wasn't screaming at the nurse, I wasn't screaming at my husband, I wasn't screaming at all. I was just very calm, and I'm very proud of myself for that, because 2.5 hours to push is a lot. And finally then at 7:24, Alea was born. That is the name reveal. We hadn't mentioned the name or anything yet. So her name is Alea Giselle J. So yeah, Alea was born, and I remember them putting her on my chest, and I was not crying or anything. I was just like trying to soothe her, and like everything was very calm. I was not expecting that for myself at all. And then my husband cut the umbilical cord. They pushed on my stomach, which hurt a lot, like really bad. After they push on your stomach to like get all the blood and everything out, and so I had delivered the placenta. And then like I just remember seeing like a nurse just putting her hand like on my stomach like hard, and she was like kneading it, like like my stomach was dough or something, and I couldn't even see what was coming out, but I just heard, and it sounded like you just turned a water faucet on. Like it just was, I just heard like everything like gushing out, and I knew like it was the blood and all the other like stuff. And they do that so that you don't like hemorrhage, I think. And they had to keep doing that every 15 minutes, which really hurt a lot and was really uncomfortable. And yeah, it was just a lot of blood at the end. But yeah, she was born 6 pounds even and 18 and 3/4. So she was I was lucky because she was small. Like some people have 10-pound, I was scared of that, but she was small, thankfully, and she was very healthy. Everything was great. And yeah, we stayed at the hospital for 2 days, and then we were able to come home. And yeah, she's just been a typical newborn baby. You know, we don't get much sleep, but she's still like a huge blessing in our lives, and we love her so much. But yeah, we had to have our masks on for everything. And when I was pushing, they told me like that they all had their masks on, so if I need to take my mask off when I was pushing, then like I could. But I didn't. I think one time I took it like off, but it didn't bother me. I thought it was gonna be so much harder pushing with the mask, but it really didn't make a difference. Like pushing is hard regardless. Oh, is Alea waking up? Let's see, so that Alea can meet. She's taking her nap right now with her dad. She's a huge daddy's girl. Oh my goodness. She's in her little Halo sleep sack. What happened, Mama? Oh. So she is sleeping, but we decided, you want to say hi, Mama? What happened? What is it? Miss Chubby Cheeks. Yep, she's just sleeping, but this is Alea. And she's pooping. I feel it. But yes, she has just been a doll when it's not nighttime. And yeah, we love her so much. So that was my labor and delivery story. I know it was kind of all over the place. I wanted to do it sooner rather than later while I still had all the details in my mind, because I've already forgotten like a lot of the pain and a lot of the stuff that happened. Mama. Here. She is just, oh, are you smiling? She loves the camera already. So yeah, that was my labor and delivery story. There will definitely be more videos about anything you guys want, honestly. But yeah, that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to be able to stick to my schedule of filming every week now. It is definitely much harder with a baby, but we still plan on like doing our videos and stuff like that. So Zeus. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next week.